They can name it whatever they can name it. Peaches. I don't care what they name it.
You're listening to TMI for the week of September 14th, 2019. Well, you have been following the news out of Ottawa, right?
Yeah, there was a bus crash?
Yeah, pretty bad one. Yeah. There's 14 people in very serious critical condition right now, and they just had a news conference at 1 o'clock. I missed the first 5 minutes, so... Yeah, there's been a lot because the weather's been bad around here.
How so?
It's just been bad. You know, lots of snow, minus 30s with the wind chill the last few nights.
How deep is the snow?
No, it's not like Austria or anything like that. I mean, it's nothing. It's global warming snow, right? But, I mean, it's been like minus 30 with the wind, and, you know, then it goes up to plus 5, and then it goes back to minus 30, all within the space of 72 hours. And so what a few of us are speculating from the footage that we've seen is that the bus was traveling westbound, which is on the north side of the transitway, and so it gets all that sunlight. And if you take a look at the pictures, it's been cut into an escarpment or a rock crop. So it's like a cap and cover kind of deal that they have with the transitway at that end of the city. And so what a bunch of us are speculating is that the snow and everything just melted onto the transitway. And if you take a look at the pictures of the bus, not the front of the bus, at the back of the bus, you can see in the westbound lanes of the transitway lots of snow and ice, and so she must have hit that at full speed, and just the whole thing just, well, if you listen to the survivors that were sitting in the back of the bus just started swerving, and it hit the transit shelter at full speed, full velocity, and nearly ripped the entire, just like the Humboldt bus crash. It just sheared off the whole passenger side of the second level of the bus. Almost went right to the end where the engine is. And, I mean, I hate those double-decker buses. That whole second floor, the maximum height is 5'7". I'm 6'4". So, anyway, so you got to be a pretty short individual to be able to use the bus. But what... I mean, the investigators will know very quickly, because if you take a look at the pictures of the bus, you can see the security camera that they have installed at the front of the bus, and so it sees everything. I think they installed those after they introduced the bus in 2012, and then 2013, one of those double-decker buses got taken out by a VIA train heading to Toronto, and it shaved off the entire front of the bus, and 6 people were killed and thrown from the bus, including the driver, and were decapitated by the train. Last night's crash, and the camera's still there. But what else they have on there is that they have on the second floor of the bus, at the back of the bus, not at the front, a camera, and that the bus driver can see everything that's going on the second floor. So they'll have footage also of the bus hitting the things. I mean, she hit black ice and snow. I mean, it's not her fault. I mean, it's whoever the clowns are clearing the bloody roads, and they didn't do their job right.
So they took her into custody, and from what I hear, they've kept her in custody.
No, she was released last night. She was released around 11:30 last night. So they're not saying why they took her in. They just said there was something that she had said. So I don't know what the hell Bordelot's talking about, but, I mean, hey. You know, it's Ottawa police.
Who's Bordelot?
He's the chief of police. So, anyway. The bus was going down Fallowfield Road. They speculate it was, as it was coming around the corner, go over the VIA rail tracks. The bus driver was blinded by the sunlight or a reflection or something like that. I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of... I don't remember. It was 2013. And the bus happened to cross the tracks just as the engine was crossing the tracks, and the force of the impact sent the engine off the tracks, and entire, from the left-hand side from the front entrance door to where the driver was sitting and the people upstairs was just, well, I mean, you know how big those locomotives are. And it just sheared it right off. It disintegrated the whole front of the bus. So yesterday's was like basically, you know, Godzilla in one of Godzilla's claws and just took off the whole top right front end. It just like, shh. And you take a look at the pictures. I mean, it's just absolutely horrific. And then there's two seats, I guess. I don't know how they got there, that were in front of the bus as well. Yeah, and there's a bunch of people that were on the ground that apparently were thrown from the top of the bus onto the transitway, and from the force of the impact and everything. So, yeah, I wish they'd just get rid of them. I hate them. I hate those double-decker buses. They're just, yeah, I don't like them at all. So...
There was a story, I think it's from last week, but I'm not sure if you saw this. I can expand on this. North Korea's ambassador to Italy went into hiding with his wife, according to the South Korea spy agency.
Yeah, I heard about that as well.
And that was at the beginning of the week, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It seems to be the week of defections or political asylum, eh?
It's just weird why South Korea's spy agency. I guess they're the ones who are keeping an eye on things, but it's in Italy. Goes into hiding.
Well, I mean, hey, I guess who knows why people do what they do, but I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, I read it, and they must have fallen out of favor with the organized crime figurehead, and who's running that little despot regime right now?
Not our fearless leader.
Corruption, incompetence, and organized crime. And it doesn't matter whether you're in Beirut, Lebanon, or in Rome, Italy. Let's go with Rome. So Rome has been having a problem for, I guess, the last 12 years. You can't get trains to run on time, etc., etc., etc. So I guess Rome and Italy, well, it's Rome, because apparently Milan's okay. Naples is okay, but they haven't been able to pick up their garbage. So why can't they pick up their garbage? Because according to everything that I've been reading, the garbage contract has been awarded to the mafia. They've been taking all the money that's meant for the infrastructure and the garbage collection in Rome, and they've been keeping it for themselves. People are now having rat contests, you know, which is the biggest rat on their street, you know, as they come scurrying out of the garbage. And so this has been going on now for quite some time, and the mayor of Rome, Virginia Raga, she took office in 2016, and she was like, you know, her campaign promise was to clean up this mess, but, you know, because she said that Rome deserved better, but apparently it just everything's in a disarray, and they're no closer to getting this done. And so this is one of the reasons that the Five-Star Movement swept into power. But then you go to Lebanon, and Lebanon has been having the same problem, or at least Beirut has been having the same problem since 1990. I think it was like 1995, I think it was. And so, you know, you have all these sites that are full. You have people being paid off, and you have disease running rampant. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting how, you know, you get organized crime involved or incompetent politicians, whether it's Hezbollah or whoever, or the Five-Star Movement, and they just seem to be more interested in lining their pockets and their egos than actually looking after their country. So, you know, it's kind of like happening here, you know. So you'd think that 2,000 years later that they'd be able to pick up their garbage in Rome. But
I don't know if I'm going to leave this in.
What's that?
We had a clip last week, and it was Nancy Pelosi saying that if the majority in the Because apparently I've been using Congress wrong. Congress is both the Senate and the House of Representatives. So Pelosi said a majority in the House of Representatives and a majority in the Senate, and if it stays on the president's desk for 10 days, it becomes law. You actually said, oh, is that like 100% majority? Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, just a majority. Mm-hmm. But it's a super majority. Mm-hmm. So that's 66%. 2/3. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was an audio recording of Pelosi.
Okay.
Maybe she said quickly super majority and I didn't catch it. But
okay.
Anyway, there it is.
For every person that they've laid off down there in the States, they have one friend. So you have 800,000 people, that goes to 1.6 million people. And you know that they have one friend, so that's 8, 16, 24, that's 2.4 million people. And they're going to have at least one friend, so 8, 16, 24, 32, 3, see what I'm saying? This is, what's amazing about this whole thing is that I guess he's just so, Trump. I mean, does he understand what backgammon is or chess? What he has done, he's affected the banks. So when people start defaulting on their mortgages and their car loans and their credit card payments, this is going to be a shit show that doesn't seem to have an end to it. And
so one of the things was mentioned maybe today. So invoices. So these bureaucrats, they're requisitioning stuff. And invoices and orders are what drives the economy that I guess feeds off government activity. So if invoices are down, and then I was thinking, it's day 21, day 22 now. We're getting close to a month. So that's like a 12th of the year, which might as well be 10%. Like we're a few weeks away from 10% of whatever GMP is produced as a result of the activities of the federal government. So this is going to have a economic impact.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like I said, I mean, when you don't have people spending like they did over, they stopped spending, 3 days before Christmas? So families and individuals. So when people start getting tossed out of their homes, if this keeps on going on for the next couple of months, when you have the TSA walking off their job, I mean, why would you go to work if you haven't been paid for a month? You might as well walk off the job. What's the point? So when you can't process goods through the border because you're not being paid, then, so Trump is, congratulations to the Republicans and to Trump and the spineless Republicans. You have totally neutered your country and by supporting this guy, and congratulations. Again, a job well done, America.
It might be a bit simplistic, but one pundit suggested that he's never had to confront a powerful female before.
Sounds like he needs to be neutered.
Who else would have stood up to him in his construction business or in his family life?
Okay, so some law enforcement is still being performed as well as mail delivery. Some of the departments, there's 9 departments I was able to find for you, and Department of Homeland Security, Justice, Treasury, Environmental Protection Agency in Nassau, I think, have been either partially or totally shut down, and they have just essential services that are running. So let's see, airport security. So the TSA workers, many of them, from passengers to bags and everything else like that, they have been, they've been told to show up to work, but they're not going to be paid. The Coast Guard, apparently, the Coast Guard personnel have been told through an email memo, that they should have garage sales. to get through this thing. They should start selling some of their stuff, which I just thought was absolutely disgusting.
Waitressing jobs is another one.
The president of the United States is telling these people that he can relate to them. Is just nauseating. So let's see. Parks and museums have been closed. People are going into Joshua Tree and cutting down limbs and branches off of the Joshua trees. Apparently, at least 3 people have also died in the national parks since the shutdown began.
I heard about a week ago it was 7, but apparently that's statistically normal.
Oh, okay. Science and research in public health has been affected as well. So a lot of labs are now sitting empty, and scientists have been sent home. So congratulations in the midst of an H1N1 flu epidemic. They're not going to be doing their jobs there. So like agencies like the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Institutes of Health, they've been unaffected, largely unaffected. So I think, I'm eating my words there. But the Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they've also cut their staff. They just have essential staff on there. Chemical factories, power plants, oil refineries, water treatment plants have also ground to a halt because the EPA has to furlough a lot of its employees. So,
did you mention food inspection?
I beg your pardon?
Pardon me? Did you mention food inspection?
Food inspection has also been affected. So if you're buying anything from the United States, people of Canada, be highly suspect. So you think that might be meat in your lasagna? They've stopped routine inspections for seafood, fruit, vegetables, and other foods at high risk of contamination. And so that's directly from the New York Times website that I'm getting all this information, if everybody's wondering. There's also over 40 million people who receive food stamps, and they will receive their benefits through January. After that, we're not too sure what's going to happen. And the same thing with the breakfast programs and what have you in the school lunch programs. They're apparently going to be operating into February, but they don't know what's going to happen after that. Tens of thousands of law enforcement personnel are working without pay. That includes the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Bureau of Prisons, Customs and Border Protection, and the Coast Guard, and the Secret Service, amongst others. Federal court proceedings have slowed as the government lawyers are asking for delays, and the federal district courts remain open, though their funding remains in doubt. Already backlogged, most immigrant courts are closed because of the shutdown, leading to long delays in deportations. Criminal investigations. The shutdown has mixed effects on those government agencies. As I mentioned before, the FBI will continue, but they're not being paid. And the Justice Department has a shutdown plan because of all the operations that the FBI have been directed towards the national security investigations.
One of my theories was a reason why Trump is for the shutdown is it might hinder his prosecution. So it turns out that we're just days away from the entire court system in the United States shutting down.
The Office of the Special Counsel, Robert Mueller, will continue its investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 election because it does not rely on congressional action for funding.
Right, but there's court cases in other jurisdictions, both state and federal.
Trump could be indicted in 2021 unless he's reelected.
Yeah.
That's the thing right there. It's something I think you were touching on a little while ago.
Yeah, it's going to be a life and death issue for him whether he's reelected. Plus, I had also mentioned the statute of limitations. Every day he's in office is another crime that probably falls off from 4 or 7 years ago, whatever the term of statutes of limitations is for whatever crimes he's committed. So, But I think Congress or the House of Representatives was going to pass a rule that suspended the statute of limitations for sitting presidents, but I don't know if that's going to make it on the agenda. All right. So apparently Trump misspoke. He meant to say Puerto Rico will pay for the wall.
Oh, yeah. There you go. He's definitely... Trump is misspeaking all the time, whether it's on Twitter or at news conferences, so...
I think we're just days away from him suggesting detained migrants will build the wall.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. He's going to get the 3-year-olds out there with their little plastic shovels and their little...
When you're building a medieval wall, don't you want slave labor?
Oh, hey, the Egyptians had it right all the time, as well as the Romans.
Ooh, the Chinese.
Oh, that too, the Chinese.
Do you think everybody got vacation pay while they were building the wall of China?
Hey, yeah, exactly, you know?
While you're building a wall, don't forget the northern border.
And we just have problems of refugees coming north of the 49th, not going south of the 49th.
Like
so,
Gucci-wearing businessmen.
and, you know, we like a public education system that is robust. And we like a healthcare... It might have problems, our healthcare system. But at least you're not going to walk out tens of millions of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars in debt. So that's why they don't need a wall north of at the 49th.
A serious illness in the United States can be $1 million.
Oh, yeah, they're a joke. Yeah, no, they're a joke. It's, you know, let the traders in Canada go down to the States and get their health care and their winter homes or their summer homes.
I think they spend twice
whatever.
as much as comparable nations on healthcare per capita. And they're worried that, a government-controlled system the prices would be out of control. So here's our first clip. Propagandist Sarah Sanders.
Land and it's by sea. It's all of the above. But one thing that you're forgetting is that the most vulnerable point of entry that we have into this country is our southern border, and we have to protect it. And the more and more that individuals
they're not coming across the southern border, Sarah. They're coming and they're being stopped at airports.
They're coming a number of ways. There's certainly, I'm not disagreeing with you that they're coming through airports. I'm saying that they come by air, by land, and by sea.
Most are Canadians overstaying their visas. So again, the wall. We need a wall at the northern border. So John Bolton,
War criminal extraordinaire, still hasn't been caught.
well, he's walking back the Syria pullout. So the problem with the clips today is we're bouncing all over the place, but you know, I could arrange the clips by subject or I could arrange them by their chronological order. Mm-hmm. And their chronological order tells the story of chaos and of trying to use stories and maybe even on purpose creating controversies throughout the week that would keep deflecting the subject back onto silly stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a classic red flag operation, wag the dog operation. I mean, it's a classic.
Rush Limbaugh watching TV and making a comment and then affecting public policy. There's your wag the dog, literally.
You know, this is why Trump said that he loves stupid people.
Did you say that?
Yeah. He loves stupid people. He said it during his campaign.
So John Robert Bolton, National Security Advisor for the United States, a diplomat. Former diplomat.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't call him a diplomat. The guy's a bloody terrorist.
National Security Advisor since April 2018.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Right. Did they lower the job qualifications for him? Must be human.
Here he is walking back the Syria pullout.
We're going to be discussing the president's decision to withdraw, but to do so from northeast Syria in a way that makes sure that ISIS is defeated and is not able to revive itself and become a threat again.
That's where we were at the start of the week. The Mexicans, the shutdown, I believe, attempts to hijack the agenda. But it seems Trump, however, is already wrapped in flypaper.
And I will tell you right now, zero. I have nothing to do with Russia. Zero.
Yeah, that's my text and email incoming notification. No collusion. Here's more Trump.
I decided ultimately not to do it. There would have been nothing wrong if I did do it.
Greatest hits. Remember, 16 of Trump's best people had contact with the Russians. That's the campaign, the transition, including Pence. If you can't figure out why he almost says nothing, don't forget Pence. 16 of his campaign.
Knows about this deal. I wasn't trying to hide anything. When I run for president, that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to do business. I was doing a lot of different things when I was running.
And just to clarify,
Been no collusion. After 2 years, no collusion.
it'd make a good ringtone.
I don't want to listen to his voice more than I have to.
And of course, Trump's evidence for these claims.
And I have to say, if they had it, it would have been out long ago.
Oh, well, he's probably innocent then. The GRU, the KGB, the FSB, the PGU, and the SVB. Putin is and was an intelligence officer.
Yeah, Colonel, wasn't it?
I'd like to add something to this. After all, I was an intelligence officer myself, and I do know how dossiers are made up.
Yeah.
And this is the Steele dossier. Putin wanted Trump to win.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because he talked about bringing U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
I mean, right, this isn't opinion. These are... Here's the quotes, you know? By midweek, Trump is juggling plates. Andrew Peter Napolitano is an American syndicated columnist whose work appears in numerous publications such as Fox News, The Washington Times, and Reason. He is senior judicial analyst for Fox News, commenting on legal news and trials. He served as a New Jersey Superior Court judge from 87 to 95 on the issue of using emergency powers for a non-emergency.
In a word, no. No, that's not me saying no, because the Supreme Court said no when Harry Truman attempted to do that. When there was a steel strike during the Korean War, he asked the Congress to authorize him to seize the steel mills and operate them against the strikers' wishes and produce steel for our troops who desperately needed it in the Korean War. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Congress can do it. Congress can pay for the steel mills and operate them, but the president can't do it on his own. Stated differently, the Supreme Court has made it very clear, even in times of emergency, the president of the United States of America cannot spend money unless it's been authorized by the Congress.
By midweek, he then makes statements that rewrite the history of Russian involvement in Afghanistan in the 70s and 80s, which mirrors exactly recent Russian talking points. Chuck Rosenberg is a former acting head of the Drug Enforcement Administration, appointed in 2015 under the Bush administration. Here's Chuck Rosenberg on Russians in Afghanistan.
The President of the United States is echoing directly the line of the Kremlin on a whole bunch of things. And so whether or not it results in an indictment, whether or not it's something we ultimately can see, touch, feel, and hear, this is something that U.S. intelligence officials have to understand. Why is the President saying what he's saying?
Cut to now, we're back to the shutdown. The shutdown is because the Mexicans won't pay. Here's Hannity on the wall.
Leading to even more death and more destruction, human trafficking, drug trafficking, violent offenders. Without a doubt, this is a national emergency. It's time to build the wall. The president is right to fight to protect American lives.
Let me ask you this. Why didn't they build the wall 3 weeks ago when they had the majority?
I mean, the fact that the President of the United States has undocumented employees in his golf clubs, how did these undocumented individuals get into the country to begin with? Who hired these undocumented individuals to work for the President? I'm just saying, the problem's already in their backyard, and they're, again, obfuscating the truth, and they're pointing south to the Mexican-American border, when the problem's already right there. So the truck's burning out in front of the house, but they have us pointing to the back of the house. Congratulations, Republicans and the Christian right, you know.
Why didn't he do this when they had a Republican Congress?
Oh, well, Jesus.
I may declare a national emergency dependent on what's going to happen over the next few days.
So you don't need congressional approval to build the wall?
No, we can use them. Absolutely. We can call a national emergency because of the security of our country. Absolutely. No, we can do it.
A few months ago, a bill had passed. He could have had $25 billion for his wall. And it would include the DACAs and the Dreamers. By the time Schumer and Pelosi showed up to sign it, he had changed his mind. On Tuesday, he scheduled a very rare speech from the Oval Office, interrupting regular programming.
You mean a rant from the Oval Office? I don't think it was a speech. It sounded more like a rant.
The list of times that the president's ever spoken from the Oval Office are like majorly historical moments. Apparently not this time.
Tonight, I am speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border. As part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. This barrier is absolutely critical to border security. It's also what our professionals at the border want and need. This situation could be solved in a 45-minute meeting. I have invited congressional leadership to the White House tomorrow to get this done.
So, Pelosi's rebuttal?
We want to start with the facts. The fact is, on the very first day of this Congress, House Democrats passed Senate Republican legislation to reopen government and fund smart, effective border security solutions. But the president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall, a wall he always promised Mexico would pay for. The fact is, President Trump has chosen to hold hostage critical services for the health, safety, and well-being of the American people and withhold the paychecks of 800,000 innocent workers across the nation, many of them veterans.
Many of them Democrats. Here's Schumer's rebuttal.
How do we untangle this mess? Well, there's an obvious solution. Separate the shutdown from arguments over border security. There is bipartisan legislation supported by Democrats and Republicans to reopen government while allowing debate over border security to continue. There is no excuse for hurting millions of Americans over a policy difference. Federal workers are about to miss a paycheck. Some families can't get a mortgage to buy a new home. Farmers and small businesses won't get loans they desperately need. Most presidents have used Oval Office addresses for noble purposes. This president just used the backdrop of the Oval Office to manufacture a crisis, stoke fear, and divert attention from the turmoil in his administration.
And somebody suggested, here's the characteristics of this president. It's unimaginable how he would respond in an actual national emergency. Or the regional emergencies that he has responded to. We can see what happened in Puerto Rico. Adam Bennett Schiff is an American politician serving as the U.S. representative for California's 26th congressional district since 2013. Senior member of the Democratic Party, Schiff has been in Congress since 2001. Trump's ties to Russia are like a red wine stain on white carpet. You can move the plant, but... And so by midweek, an error in a redacted document revealed that Manafort and his partner had sent Oleg Deripaska poll data. And this isn't public poll data, this is in-house party polling data. It's just interesting that Oleg Deripaska is one of the companies and individuals who were being sanctioned for Russian involvement in the 2016 election. Was apparently a meeting on Thursday to relax the sanctions against Deripaska. Here's Adam Schiff on the Deripaska sanctions.
Deripaska is, of course, not the only Russian oligarch who's been sanctioned. There are a great many others, and a great many of them are likewise in charge of very large companies and have very large holdings. Why are we treating this particular oligarch differently? I just don't understand the rationale.
Aluminum giant Rusal and another giant resource corporation, Basic Element. These are the corporations that Deripaska owns and runs or owns majority shares in, and were on the list of sanctioned corporations. It's interesting to note that the sanctions were lifted around the 17th of December, and there's normally a 30-day time period where the House of Representatives can object to the lifting of sanctions. Timing the lifting of sanctions just 2 weeks before the end of that government term, they were obviously hoping that they'd run the clock out on it. And maybe they have, because that Congress has ended. However, they had brought him back, the head of the Treasury Department, who was actually signing the papers to lift these sanctions, for a meeting on Thursday. Here's more of Schiff.
And so striking about all of this, and you're asking exactly the right questions, why would the Russians want this data? What use did they make of it? But you look at this all in the context of what is going on at the time. The Russians are embarked in this massive social media campaign to tilt the election in Mr. Trump's favor. You've got Manafort trying to get money or get debt relief from these oligarchs like Deripaska that he is owed money or owes money to, offering data on the campaign. You've got at the same time this lawyer that we learned more about, Veselnitskaya, who was indicted this week, setting up this meeting in Trump Tower, having this close relationship with the Russian government, offering dirt.
And that was the meeting at Trump Tower. So here's more of Schiff. And this is all because a document was incorrectly redacted, and reporters could just unredact it with a couple right clicks. Here's more Schiff.
Perils of that when we learn more about this Trump Tower Moscow deal. When we were misled, when Michael Cohen didn't testify truthfully before us about how long that attempted business transaction went on, that was something the Russians could compromise the president on. They were on the other side of that transaction. They could have exposed the fact that the president sought the help of the Kremlin, even while he was denying it during the presidential campaign, to make that deal go through. The same is true if the Russians were laundering money through the Trump Organization. They could expose that at any time. The president, if they were engaged in that conduct, would know the Russians possess that kind of compromise. And we simply don't know whether this is something Mueller has been allowed to investigate by the Deputy Attorney General.
So in regular contact with the Russians, regular calls on the phone, even talk of installing extra personal lines between, I think it's an embassy in some European country. One has to wonder, is he watching RT? The bank, VTB, Felix Sater, involved in lifting Russian sanctions, Manafort giving polling data, people tied with the intelligence organizations in Russia. But here we are, back to the wall. So now we're a day after the meeting, because Trump said tomorrow we're going to have a 45-minute meeting. Pelosi and Schumer. Here's Pelosi the day after they had that meeting, the second meeting. Trump apparently stormed out.
The president seems to be insensitive to that. He thinks maybe they could just ask their father for more money, but they can't. But they can't. If you don't understand financial insecurity, then you would have a policy that takes pride in saying, I'm going to keep government shut down for months or years, unless you totally agree to my position.
Right, he was making $300,000 a year by age 3. He can just ask his dad for more money. So by now the plates are smashing. He's been juggling plates. Here's a few reminders.
Mexico's going to pay for it. Obviously,
Mexico's going to pay for it.
Say Mexico, excuse me. When I say Mexico's going to pay for the wall, you think they're going to write a check for $20 billion or $10 billion or $5 billion or 2 cents? No.
And another reminder. reminder.
If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I
We
am
disagree.
proud, and I'll
We
tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down.
By today, now it's the longest shutdown in the history of the United States.
Most likely I will do that. I would actually say I would. I can't imagine any reason why not, because I'm allowed to do it. The law is 100% on my side. We have the absolute right to declare a national emergency, and this is security stuff. This is a national emergency, if you look at what's happening.
Is Mexico going to be enough to change the focus away from impeachment? Neil Kumar Katal is an American lawyer and professor of national security law at Georgetown University Law Center. Katal served as acting Solicitor General to the United States from May 2010 until June 2011. Here he is on Lawrence O'Donnell on Thursday.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I want to first of all start with the emergency that the president is thinking about declaring at the southern border. What happens if he does that?
Well, it's going to be challenged, and I think it's a very weak argument. So I think there's two important pieces to it. One is kind of whether or not the president has any chance of winning this, whether this is an emergency. And second, what is this really saying about the president that he's going to try and assert this? On the first, on kind of is this an emergency? The only emergency Trump can point to is the fact he didn't get his way. That is traditionally not an emergency. The Supreme Court, most famously in the Steele seizure case in 1952, rejected these kinds of claims. And I'm beginning to think maybe Trump wants to be impeached. I mean, that's the only way to really make sense of what this is about, because you're dealing with a president who has effectively no agenda left. His agenda is, as best I can tell, Twitter and the wall. And the wall isn't working out for him. And this is a president who, frankly, acts like a snowflake. I mean, he's a guy who claims to be the victim all the time, and an impeachment proceeding, of course, would allow him to make that cry even more.
What specifically in the regulation protects Mueller's ability to deliver a report to Congress?
So two things. Number one, whenever the Attorney General rejects something that the special counsel Mueller asks for, it triggers an automatic reporting requirement to Congress, and both to the majority and minority parties. So that's an anti-cover-up provision. So we anticipated something like this in which you'd have something nefarious that might go on, and that is one safety check. And then the second safety check are the limitations on executive privilege itself. Executive privilege is this idea that the president's private communications or government communications about important sensitive matters not be released. But the Supreme Court in 1974, when Nixon tried to assert it to protect against his own wrongdoing, unanimously said, the public has a right to know.
Reasonable suspicion, specific and articulable facts. The presence of these is what led to the special counsel. Is the investigation into Trump acting on behalf of Russian intelligence preliminary or full? He goes to the border, he threatens an emergency, he suggests the military should pay, and then suggests Texas and Puerto Rico pay. But apparently, you can just cut through the wall.
There are pictures this morning showing steel barrier wall being sawed straight through. What good is a steel wall if they can saw through it?
Well, that's a wall that was designed by previous administrations. There's nothing that can't be penetrated, but you fix it.
And with an entire court system about to run out of money, immigration already backlogged and getting worse. Here's another Trump.
They can name it whatever they can name it. Peaches. I don't care what they name it. But we need money for that barrier.
Still, each time the dust clears, he's still stuck to the flypaper. James Comey was fired because he's disgraced partisan hack, and his deputy, Andrew McCabe, who was in charge at the time, is a known liar, fired by the FBI, said the White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders in a statement. Quote, unlike President Obama, who let Russia and other foreign adversaries push America around, President Trump has actually been tough on Russia, she added. The next clip, that felt historical at the time. Even SNL did a skit on it.
Who was going to fire Comey? There's no good time to do it, by the way.
Because in your letter you said I accepted their recommendation,
yeah, well,
so you had already made the decision.
I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was really room.
He made a recommendation. He's highly respected, very good guy, very smart guy. The Democrats like him, the Republicans like him. He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
Did you see the SNL where they set it up just like Lester Holt was interviewing Trump, and he said, I fired Comey because he kept going on with the investigation, and then Lester Holt looks at the camera and says, is that it? Did I get him?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I haven't seen SNL for years.
So apparently this is one of the two events that caused the FBI, this was sort of released later on Friday, to place Trump's name at the top header of a counterintelligence investigation that led to the appointment of Mueller by Rod Rosenstein. The New York Times headline, Inquiry into whether Trump was secretly working for Russia. I mean, you can't make this up. David Corn is an American political journalist, author, and the chief of the Washington Bureau for Mother Jones. He has been a Washington editor for The Nation and appears regularly on Fox News, MSNBC, National Public Radio, and Blogging Heads TV, opposite James Pinkerton.
Donald Trump and Paul Manafort and Donald Trump Jr. and others related to the campaign again and again reiterated, they repeated, they echoed the Russian propaganda, the Russian disinformation, that they had nothing to do with this. This is where the real collusion in plain sight is, even after Donald Trump in mid-August 2016 received a private intelligence briefing and was told then by the U.S. intelligence community that the Russians were behind these attacks. He came out publicly and repeated what Vladimir Putin was saying, that Russia had nothing to do with this, and he did that throughout the campaign and even after the U.S. government made it official publicly that they believed Russia was behind this. So there's collusion in the cover-up, and you have the Trump Tower meeting, and you have time and time again where Donald Trump himself or someone associated with the campaign is sending a signal to Moscow, we want to work with you, we're on your side, we're going to protect you. If people charge you with intervening in the election, we're open for business, we want to deal with you. And I know throughout the 2016 campaign, counterintelligence people and people in the national security world were aghast. They were wondering what's going on with this guy and wondered if there was something else other than what was obvious.
I mean, you remember the Helsinki press conference. I mean, yeah. There's another bit of David Corn.
Disrupt and cause American democracy to look messy, and at some point they also decided helping Trump would be part of their aims as well. So this was information warfare. This is the most serious matter that one can think of because it attacks the foundation of our society. And yet Donald Trump has never come to terms with this. The Republican Party in general has not had a reckoning and realized that this was a monumental act. And I think what we've seen is one of the biggest scandals in the history of America. Yet we get distracted. We talk about Donald Trump's tweets. And so I can only imagine what it was like inside the FBI all this time when they worried about the Russian attack and any interactions between the Trump crowd and the adversary that was attacking a U.S. election.
There may be nothing that Mueller could report that would change the mind of the majority of Republicans and vote to impeach. Nothing.
I told you that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Not going to change anything.
They're opening an investigation into the Ukrainians who visited and contributed to the inauguration. Another quote I heard this week, President without credibility, Republicans without backbone, and Fox News without integrity. Another joke was, I don't know if you heard this, but that Oval Office speech, in the hours before it, he sent out a mailer to all his supporters.
Okay.
If you donate $5, we'll put your name on a list. So then he does his 10-minute speech, and I guess not as many people had replied as he wanted. So he sends out another message saying, oh, we're extending the deadline. You can still get your name on the list if you donate $5. Well, it turns out the mailer said you were donating $5 to a fund that would, I think it would help pay for the wall or something. But it turns out the fine print says that money actually went for his re-election campaign for 2020. Another thing he hasn't suggested is martial law. Trump alignment syndrome. So rather than Trump derangement syndrome, I'm suggesting Trump alignment syndrome.
Find us on Twitter at @ThatArcher, our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Rate the show on iTunes. It changes the way the show is listed.
We're just trying to deal with those Americans and the fact that they've regarded Canada as a national security threat. So I think Trudeau's trying to keep his job before he gets thrown out of office on Monday, October 21st, on our 43rd federal election. So,
So apparently there are by-elections in February?
Yeah, one in Outremont, which is in Montreal, one in York Simcoe, which is Ontario, and one that is in South Burnaby, which is in British Columbia.
That'll be a really good indicator of how he will fare.
Oh, Trudeau's pooched. He's pooched. Yep, he's pooched. So, you get all these people who are saying no to oil, no to natural gas. So I guess they're no to business. They're no to heating their homes. It's, like I said, it's going to be minus 30 again here tonight. So I guess those people who don't want us to have heating in our homes or electricity in our homes want us to be sitting in minus 40. It's funny you should say that, because
the headline today was Trudeau was proud of a project in Saskatchewan.
Apparently, geothermal plant.
Yeah, they dig down 3 kilometers, and they've just in one well made enough, or can potentially make enough to take, looking for the number, 7,400 cars off the road, or heat. I can't remember how many houses.
Well, I think geothermal is like, if you look at a place like Iceland, everything's geothermal in Iceland. They don't have any gas or whatever it is. I think for heating homes, I think it's all geothermal.
It's not going to work everywhere, but it's just, for example, here you are in Saskatchewan. Now, I think it's 3 kilometers is a long way to dig, but above it is just regular prairie farmland. And yet you dig this hole, if you go deep enough, you get the super boiling water. They pump it out and they use it to generate electricity, which sounds great, and no one's more into that kind of thing than I am. I wonder, are they putting the water back in when they're done with it? Are they going to cool that water if they up production, or are they draining the water out of a deep aquifer, and will that resource run out? But that's for people who want to read the article and look deeper. I think I heard it on CBC.
This is so inconsequential.
Okay.
Because Trump is going to walk away into the sunset, laughing his ass off, and from behind, with his back to everybody in the United States, he's going to give everybody the finger as he gets on the helicopter.
I'll give you
and
this.
He flies off.
He might not go to jail. He might go to jail after he leaves office, if he's still alive.
No,
but he might get kicked out of office.
No,
and that's something to work for.
No. I'm willing to put $50 on it right now. He's not getting kicked out.
All right. You're on the record.
I'm on the record. Oh, yeah. He's not getting kicked out.
Tell me how to use hockey.
I've been... Hockey?
Yeah.
What about hockey? I've fucking been watching hockey since I was a kid. Okay. Since my grandfather... watching with my grandfather, sitting at his, sitting next to him on the floor,
Ballard,
drinking my thing, watching the Montreal Canadiens or the Toronto Maple Leafs ever since I was a kid.
Gilmore.
Yeah, all those guys, yeah. Guy Lafleur, all those guys, the Rockets,
You wait for the fights?
I don't care about the fights. I never liked the fights. I just like the hockey.
And so you're rooting for the Senators?
Oh, God, no. Never.
Okay.
Never root.
Who are you rooting for?
No. It's always Montreal and Toronto. I even got my little Montreal thing.
So what do you do if on a Saturday night there's no Montreal or Toronto on hockey? Do you still watch the hockey?
Always Montreal and Toronto on Saturday night.
Really?
I got my little Montreal, little Canadian guy right here, right now. I'm holding...
Would you face paint? Would you do the face paint?
Would I what?
Well, why not show up
no,
dressed
God,
up?
No.
Well, you're going to buy a jersey?
I'm not an Uber fan.
What?
I'm not an Uber fan.
Oh, okay. But it seems pretty important. And it seems tied to our culture here.
What
do you do when hockey ends?
I'm a fan of hockey, it's, I got a couple of hockey sticks here,
You know what
pucks
killed my
and
hockey?
Skates and everything like
the
that.
The NHL strike in the 90s, and that was it. That was it.
Oh, okay. Changed my diet to organic and everything else like that. 75% to 80% of my stuff is organic now. But on Saturday nights, hockey night, forget the organic. I want all the processed crap that I can get my little fingers on.
Yeah.
Pass me 10 cigarettes. I will smoke my ass off that night with everybody else in the room. Saturday nights is my night to unwind. It's just, I don't have to be PC. I don't have to be, with regards to my health and eating properly and everything. I just let my hair down. Well, my hair, I'm bald.
That's
but I just, let the proverbial hair down on a Saturday night and just hang with the dudes. And
you get pissed off, right?
No.
If
God, no.
Dougie
it's
misses
the
the shot,
it's just a game. I can't get pissed off
really?
in the game. Everybody else gets pissed off.
If your
but I'm
team
just like,
loses,
whatever. Yeah, fuck, I couldn't care less. I mean, I care. I want them to go to the end. I want them to get the championship.
What about that feeling of devastation for 20 minutes after team loses?
It's just a game.
Okay.
The Yellow Vest movement began in France in 2018. It was an online petition in May of 2018, reached 300,000 signatures by mid-October. Mass demonstrations began. So by the 17th of November, everything was in full movement. The whole movement was motivated by rising prices and the high cost of living, and claims that a disproportionate burden of the government's tax reforms are falling on the working and middle classes, especially in the rural and urban areas. The protesters have been calling for lower fuel taxes, a reintroduction of the solidarity tax on wealth, and a minimum wage increase, and also for the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, to resign. So they're saying that this is the worst set of demonstrations, the Yellow Vest movement, since the 1960s. So it's basically what we've been protesting. Well, most people around the world have been protesting now for decades. So, I mean, it's really nothing new. It's just, it's just a different name. Same shit, different day, different name. So that's what they're all about.
Weren't there some yellow vests in Canada at a protest?
They're starting it now. Yeah, they're trying to grab on to the coattails of the movement in France. But, I mean, it's the same protest. It's just wrapped up in a different marketing thing. People have been complaining about this for a long time. So, fuel prices are too high, cost of living's too high, too much of a tax burden on the middle class and the lower class, not enough on the 1%. It's just being repackaged a different way.
And this probably is driven by decades of deficit financing, which then leads to austerity and ultimately the cutback of services and the increase in taxes. So one might be a jerk in our view. The time to protest it was 20 years ago. But then, again, that wouldn't have changed or done anything. But And this is sort of a common theme, like Greece or anywhere where austerity has been used to solve long-term debt.
Mm-hmm.
And that debt is the fault of government policy.
No, again, I'm going to disagree with you and everybody else out there that says that. It's the fault of society because we keep on, I don't know whether it's the marketing or the message is not clear to everybody. Everybody agrees about the same thing, but they don't agree to how we're supposed to implement this. Everybody agrees that the majority of the people, the cost of living, living one paycheck to the next, the majority of people, and high credit card debt continue.
I've always been interested in, and I remember in the 70s, it was the number of people killed a day on television, but you couldn't say shit.
Oh, what are you talking about? TV shows? I
Yeah.
remember. I vaguely remember that. Oh yeah, 50 people were killed tonight on prime time. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
I think it was 10,000 a year killed on television, but you can't say shit, or we can't have a boob pop out. Can't see
I
our
was
own
just
body.
thank you. I was just going to say that. Heaven forbid you show a female nipple. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's the thing. So when we cut now to the Me Too and the pressure put on freedom of speech and political correctness, and now comedy. If we can turn the page now to comedy. So people who go in and pay a ticket to go into a comedy club and then come out offended. So you could post a notice at the front, this isn't a safe space, things may be said that are controversial. You could Google the comedians and see they're not all politically correct, and if it's not for you, you're too sensitive, you don't buy the ticket.
So it's okay to say that if I caught my son playing with the dolls, that I would smash it over his head or something like that?
Well,
I think that's
that's
absolutely
in bad
abhorrent, and I'm
taste.
surprised that guy is even allowed to work still. So, that's just
Okay.
absolutely disgusting, and there's
All
no
right.
place for it. The fact that other comedian, what's that fucking jerk's name, making fun of the students from Parkdale who were involved in that shooting last spring.
Okay, that's
who
Louis
the
CK.
hell? I don't care who this guy is. I don't care what his work is. You go after teenagers that were involved in a mass shooting event, and you think it's funny? Or you think it's funny about somebody's sexuality? No, man. Take a long walk off a short pier
where do you
into
draw the line?
piranha-infested waters.
So where do you
That's
draw
not
the
comedy.
problem
It's
is-
not comedy.
Well, then he won't sell many tickets. But where
Well, no,
do you draw
it's
the
not
line?
comedy. It's not comedy.
Okay, then
Children being murdered
Free
or
speech.
beating your child up because they're gay is not comedy. I don't know what part of the moral scale that you sit on, but it's not comedy.
Okay, then it's storytelling and spoken word for a fee at the door in front of a live audience. Let's call it that.
No, it's still no. You're looking for laughs, man. It's all about laughs, right? It's all about narcissism. It's all about laughs. You
Well,
want to
actually,
be up on
there's-
stage.
there's a
you want
new
people
branch.
laughing at you and your jokes.
There's a new branch of comedy. I can't remember her name. It's a famous set now that's been talked about for the last year. An Australian comedian, Hannibal. Anyway, and wherein the controversy is that her presentation wasn't comedy and didn't follow any of the guidelines of comedy, and so it could be spoken word or storytelling. So so I'm just trying to take the tag of comedy out because you're discluding these statements because they're shocking and maybe offensive to some people. I said to you, where do you draw the line? I think you tried to say, well, it is comedy or it's not comedy. Well, then I have to redefine it. Then it's spoken word and storytelling. But where do you draw the line in preventing people from expressing freedom of speech when you post a notice at the front if you're sensitive? All right, I don't want to get tied up in this. I was actually trying to make a deeper point. So what about this idea, and I'm opening myself up to some attack here. What about the idea that statistically most of the people who complain to the manager at a comedy club when they're offended are white women on behalf of another insulted race? And what if I say to you, statistically, it's white women who go home and watch murder mysteries, Murder, She Wrote, and CSI, special victims, SCV, what is it? So the SVU, special, Law and
I can't
Order.
watch that stuff. It makes me
all
cry.
that. No, I can't. It's never been entertaining to me how to kill your wife or husband using poison and get away with it.
Yeah, no.
I'm just saying.
Compelling TV at all.
I'm just saying that here you are, the statistic, most of the people, patrons at a comedy club who go and complain about the insensitivity of the comedian and file complaints and go on Twitter and go crazy, are the same people who are going home and watching Dexter. And we're back to this whole number of people killed a night in primetime versus you can't say shit. Do you think, no, that's sexist because it's white women, so I'm being sexist?
Everybody has different tastes, and they contextualize everything, around what they feel comfortable with or familiar with. So some people will regard beating up your child that identifies as being gay as being totally acceptable, where someone like myself would find it morally reprehensible, and I'd be introducing them to a bunch of guys named Bubba at the Correctional Institute.
Right,
and,
but we're talking about comedy. These are actions.
I don't find, again, there's no need to repeat what I said because you know where I stand on this. But I'm just saying, I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's.
I guess I'm saying you're making a false equivalency between saying something and doing something.
Okay, well.
Okay. Anthony Jeselnik is known as a sharp-witted shock comedian. And I mean, the classic example is I think some people were eaten by a shark in New Zealand, and the next morning he's like, oh, is it too soon? And he's all making shark jokes. To the point where the Norwegian government or the
New Zealand
government filed a diplomatic protest, and it blew up into a big thing. But he's a shock comedian. He's going to talk about dead babies because it's shocking and halting and stimulating and often delivered in a funny way. Are the subjects, if taken literally, are not funny and pleasant and worthy of laughter, but the human brain is also wired to respond to absurdity in a way which we pay money to feel, laughing. And
well,
so
I know, yeah.
There's another comedian, Joey Coco Diaz, who's totally and utterly politically incorrect, and has a colored past, and and again, it's a shock comedian that isn't working clean. That's blue. Now, the example of Andrew Dice Clay, that's a lot of people can, especially today in the Me Too movement, find all kinds of things he said that I can't defend, and I'm not going to try. But at the time and in the setting, it was very shocking, and the shock is part of the absurdity, that turnaround, that second where you laugh, and it's stimulating, and it's exciting, and it's freedom of speech. Not everybody's going to want to see those two comedians. A lot of people are going to be, but what point does it become the audience member's responsibility to not put themselves in harm's way?
Oh, I agree. Well, that's a little overly dramatic, but I mean, I choose not to waste my time, my valuable time, and my valuable money on something that I find reprehensible. So whether it be a book or watching the President of the United States or purchasing a CD or a movie.
I thought the example you gave, which I wish you would just repeat, you listed a harshness.
Yeah, I'll repeat it again for you.
Well,
I don't know. There's one comedian, I guess he
beating his
was
kids
being
up
interviewed
with...
by Ellen DeGeneres this week or last week, and it's a controversy with regards to this individual hosting the Oscars. And if I recall correctly...
Okay, it's Kevin Hart you're talking about.
But I'm not going to mention the guy's name. He doesn't deserve to have his name mentioned.
Well,
so
he and some comedians, very funny and wonderful comedian.
Yeah,
but
well,
10 years ago...
talk about beating up your kid because they're gay.
If they were gay, he'd beat his kids. It's a joke, dude.
No, it's not a joke. So
Sure it is.
for all the people I know out there who are gay, who've been beaten up either by strangers in the parks here in Ottawa or back in Toronto, or no, there's nothing funny about people being gay beat up because of their sexuality. So, and the fact that Ellen DeGeneres said that that was supposed to be funny, I'm really surprised and disappointed in her for doing that.
Call as a joke or piece of comedy.
It's not a joke.
Is not disqualified by it not being funny.
It's not a joke. Okay.
You didn't find it funny.
You talk to somebody who's been beaten up as a young adult.
Do you know what a joke is?
I know what a joke is,
Okay.
but it's not funny.
But difference between a joke and something that's funny are two different things. Those are different things. Like there's street jokes that were funny for 100 years and they're not funny now. They're still jokes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, whatever, man.
Well,
I don't find any joke whatsoever. That's where I've grown up. There's no joke with regards to someone's sexuality and beating them up. Those two things in one sentence do not equal Jell-O. There is no joke in it. I don't know why you or other people like Ellen do not understand beating up a young child because of their sexuality.
but what about a child beating up Michael Jackson? See, you've got all the content
Again,
in there.
You're taking that totally out of context. It's
That's
totally
an
taken
example.
out of context.
No, I've
Okay, we're
reversed
talking
the
about
scenarios.
This clown saying that he would beat up his child if he found out that they were gay.
Yeah.
There's no joke. It's child abuse. Pure and simple. Physical and emotional.
It's so absurd that it's
No, it's not
a
absurd.
joke.
Dave, it's not absurd. When you work with people that have been abused as children because of their sexuality or their orientation, maybe all you people out there, pardon my grammar, will understand it. But obviously you got a bullet in your head and you're too stupid to realize it.
It's a
So there you
semantical
go.
argument.
You keep that in.
It's a semantical argument.
No, it's not a semantical argument.
Sure it is. There's two things. A joke and there's something that's funny. Those are two different things. There's lots of jokes that are not funny. Mm-hmm. That is no argument. Mm-hmm. I've never said it's funny because it's hurting or punching down or there's a victim who pays a price. That's whether it's funny or not. But a joke is like a piece of poetry. It's structured. It usually has beats. There's points of reference that need to be set up, and then there's a logical juxtaposition. Does it work all the time? No. Is it out of taste? Yes. Some people have founded whole careers on being shocking and out of time and out of pace with the norms. Anyway,
will catch up to
I
them
don't want you to
eventually.
think I'm arguing anything that's funny. But we are talking about writing a joke that has content that you obviously don't think is funny, and I'm not saying I do. But that doesn't mean it's not a joke. Anyway, that's just a logical thing. But again, I keep trying to get back to this. I thought that earlier you mentioned some facts that I thought were related to the Louis C.K. thing. Mm-hmm. So Louis C.K., who, as you realize, he lost all his shows and he lost all his movie deals and everyone's fired, and he waited almost a year and now he's starting to do the comedy circuit, working material in Toronto, New York. And this week, I hope I can remember this week he told a joke. Oh, you're right. It was making fun of the Parkland victims of the shooting. And someone, I think, recorded it and then posted it on social media. And people are trying to continue to bury Louis C.K. But on the other hand, Louis C.K., that's what you do. Is you write some jokes and you go work them in small rooms. And you're not calling them finished jokes. You're working the material. It's not like he went and put these jokes in a special at the Air Canada Centre. And that's what they do. And it's a very risky thing. And this argument of one of the roles of comedians is to come up to and cross the line. And it actually is very helpful to society because it helps us define where that line is. And that line is always changing. Mm. So, when we look at the objection you were making, that he's making fun of kids who were the victim of shootings in now, especially Louis C.K., who's already gotten in trouble, right, for his actions, not necessarily his comedy. This is what they have to do. Is come up to these lines and flirt with them. Is there no role for that at all? Do you have to always take it so seriously with the... Do you really think that Louis C.K. Has no empathy for the shooting victims when he writes a joke like that?
I'm the last person in the world to write a definition of what comedy is. But I always thought it was either situational, the situations that you find yourself in everyday life, whether, you're at the checkout counter driving or whatever, at work or with family or friends. It's not it's not going after somebody who is gay. It's not going after somebody who's been involved in a mass shooting where you're supposed to feel safe and secure in a school. So if that somehow is now being translated into comedy, then or poetry, that, I guess it's a morality play, and I guess it's what you, or not you specifically, but I guess it's what people regard. It's all within the realm of the context of what you're comfortable doing in dissing other people and disrespecting the situation that they've been in or they find themselves born into.
If you had to redact then all the jokes and comedians who said anything in the last 100 years that didn't fit your sensibility, what will we have left?
Look, again, making fun of other people with respect to their sexuality or their ethnicity or being caught up in a murder massacre. If that is now what jokes are, I just don't want to have anything to do with it. I'll watch Third Rock from the Sun, or I'll watch The Big Bang Theory. To me, that's comedy. The Dick Van Dyke Show, the Mary Tyler Moore Show, that's comedy. WKRP in Cincinnati, that's comedy. The stuff that's coming out of these two reprehensible individuals, I'm sorry, that's not comedy. Lucille Ball is comedy. Okay? Making fun of other people the way they are, Archie Bunker was a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant show. But the unfortunate thing, I think, and this is just my opinion, brilliant show, but it opened the door for the reprehensible people that are out there to say that it's okay to be racist. I know when I said something once, I repeated something that he had said, or I think it was Fred Flintstone. I got whacked up the side of the head by my mom, and I can count on one hand how many times my mom gave me a whack in my life. It was 3 times that I recall, and each and every one of those times, I know I deserved it. So, and she was like, "Nah, man, you can't say that." Something to that effect. My mom's more articulate than that, but. So when I was repeating something Fred Flintstone had said, or Archie Bunker had said. So, kids mirror everything back. They parrot things, right? And I can give you a bunch of other examples, but I mean, it's just not, it's not cool when you're going after somebody like that. If you want to make fun of somebody, make fun of yourself.
So the criterion under which you would judge whether something's funny or not. Now that we can talk about, I think, pretty easily. And some of the rules that may, and again, you got to really be careful with rules, but largely you don't want to be punching down, and you don't want a group to be paying a price for the joke. Those are the sort of outlines, and there's some comedians who've given their whole careers to strictly stay on the clean side. But there's also a whole crapload of comedians who play the blue side, and they're goddamn funny too. And yeah, some of it isn't politically correct, and that's how the human brain is wired. And I'm just afraid that, with corporations and liberal democracy dissolving, that it's very dangerous when you start making rules, especially when it comes to freedom of speech. No, yeah.
Look, it was acceptable not to let persons of certain heritage or ethnicity, enter establishments or services back in the day. Mm-hmm. But we became more, I would like to believe, we became more wise, more enlightened.
Right.
We realize human beings are human beings, regardless of their ethnicity or their religion, right? So that does not mean that comedy should be evolving as well.
Okay, so that you've just absolved Kevin Hart of guilt from 10 or 15 years ago. Because 10 or 15 years ago...
No. Once you say something, you own it, man. There's no absolving it. History is still going to judge you through the lens of time.
Yeah, but you just agreed that we evolve. What was right?
No, we do evolve, but I'm not talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about 2019.
Oh.
I'm talking about what happened in 2018 with respect to these two individuals, okay, and what they've said and done.
Well, it's very interesting because Todd Glass would agree with you. I've discussed this with him, and so, I'd be giving examples of comedians in a different time saying things that were mean, and what he's saying is that wrong then. He's agreeing with you that wrong then is wrong now, and it always was wrong. But,
Do you know how many people, when I was living on Pembroke Street, when I was at Jarvis Collegiate, do you know how many friends I had staying over at my place that were gay or bisexual or lesbian or whatever? And they were crying because their families didn't accept them, or they were crying because they were beaten up by somebody. Okay? So that was in the 1980s. So the tears that people shed in my apartment back in the 1980s are just as relevant as the tears that somebody sheds in 2019.
So what you're saying is that those people would have been just as offended because they're victims of the actual situation then as they would be now. That's a good point. So, well, maybe you win this one.
I'm not looking to win anything, bud.
So you're totally winning that, and stop denying it.
Again, I'm not...
Well, you fought and made a point, and I fought the other side, and I think I lost and you won. I mean, be a good sore winner, for fuck's sakes. No, that's what it was.
More information about Maxime Bernier, because we have the 43rd election coming up on Monday, the 21st of October. So Maxime Bernier, so Libertarian Party of Canada, and for people who are not familiar with libertarian ideals, from what I've been able to understand, it's about less government involvement and also, say, the dairy board or what have you, having quotas on dairy, and the market rules, and that's it.
Yeah, so they would be willing to get rid of trade boards and marketing boards, and
yeah, exactly.
So it's called laissez-faire, no?
Ouais, exactement. So that's the extent of my French.
Same here.
Yeah.
But you live like feet. You can see Quebec from your house.
Yeah. So anyway, so so what is the People's Party of Canada? The People's Party of Canada is a federal political party founded by Maxime Bernier, formerly the Conservative Party of Canada, which was formerly known as the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, which was formerly known as the Reform Party of Canada, which was known also as the Alliance Party of Canada. So
and
if
before
you can keep
that,
track
the
of all
Conservative
that.
Party again.
Yeah, the Progressive Conservative Party. So now this is just another maturation, if you will, of the Progressive Conservative Party to becoming a Libertarian Party. Went down that rabbit hole. So apparently they're saying that they have approximately 30,000 founding members, and the party was founded in September 14, 2018, and it's headquartered in the lovely, bustling town of Gatineau. Anyway, they are going to be running a full slate of candidates, 348, I think it is, for this election. And the election, as I said, will be on the 21st. So go back 6 weeks, and from the 21st, so I guess the election is going to start the beginning of September, so right at the end of the summer, right at the end of August. So we know that everybody's going to be on the hustings as soon as...
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Will they be drawing their membership from conservatives disenchanted with the Conservative Party, or liberals disenchanted with the Liberal Party?
Yeah, I always say liberals are kind of like, you got your red Tories and you got your your blue liberals. I think... Yeah, it'd be fair to say...
You know what I'm asking. Are they going to fracture
it's going to split
the
vote within the
Conservative
Conservative Party? Yeah, most definitely. I see that happening.
So,
just like the NDP would fracture the vote if they actually had a good leader with the Liberals.
So why would you be so pessimistic about Trudeau's second term?
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I'm not in any better position financially. I'm actually in worse financial position. You know, why does somebody like Bill Davis, who was an incredible politician for his time, and, you know, we have a full economy on all, you know, pumping on all fours or all eights. Ontario Place is brand new, and it's doing really well. And you go to 2018, and our infrastructure is falling apart. Ontario Place is no longer open. They're thinking of destroying it and building condos there. Like, you need more condos in Toronto, ugly condos, and destroying Ontario Place. And, oh, geez, our power system is now suspect. So that's the Liberals, that's the NDP, and that's the Conservative, all three governments.
So our electricity is the most expensive, all costs included, you could have in North America because of Bill Davis's plan to build its 20 nuclear reactors in Ontario. Only Ontario. And he just happened to have a friend who owned, was it Noranda Mines?
Okay.
So, best friend, I think they used the same chef or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I actually know that almost secondhand. Anyway, his best friend happens to own Miranda Wines. They lock them into very high uranium prices, even though the price of uranium was dropping. And here we are 50 years later with these nuclear power plants that nobody wants to cope with the cost of running.
Well, I thought they were going to be closing them down. I thought I've heard something in the last little while where they're going to be... Isn't Darlington being closed down or Pickering being closed down?
Yeah, Pickering was supposed to close down, I think, by now. But they extended the life of it so that they could shut down reactors at Darlington and spend billions and billions and billions of S&C dollars, taxpayer dollars through S&C level, and refurbing them.
So they're refurbishing them, they're not shutting them down?
No. And now there's a plan now to start refurbishing reactors at Bruce. There's 8 there. So they've kept Pickering longer than the original specifications. There's actual number, hundreds, 210,000 full power running hours rating for the rods, and they're almost at that threshold now. They're exceeding it by keeping the plant open longer than they promised they would. And it's because they think they need to supplement the lost electricity generated by Darlington, but the fact of the matter is that as energy conservation and green-spirited competing generating forces like wind, solar, and hydro and geothermal and all these other impacts have actually proven that we don't need the power.
I always hear. I've always been under the impression that we're producing more power than we actually need.
Oh yeah, we dump it, we blow steam, and then we sell
Give it to the Americans for free.
To the Americans, not for free, Ian Stolberg.
Well, I've heard free.
At negative prices.
Oh, at negative
they
prices.
pay us to take our electricity. So there's your nuclear power.
See, you know, I mean, okay, and you know, and this is to all our American friends down there. If anybody says, what has Canada done for them lately?
Find us on Twitter, @thatarcher. Send us an email, archer@twxnet.com. For guest links and contact info, visit our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Find us on Android and Apple podcast apps. Subscribe and rate the show on iTunes.
I'm Dave Archer in Toronto.
And I'm Ian Stolberg in Ottawa.